Next, I'm going to discuss their treatment, both treatment goals and the interventions I use to help this couple. I wanted to take a moment to talk about goal setting and working with a couple on individual goals as well as couples goals. I usually spend my first few sessions really getting to know the couple. I do a pretty thorough assessment. We talk a lot about their past, their families of origin, their previous relationships, values, priorities, spiritual issues, work history. And in the context of this, I make a lot of notes about what seems to be important to them. We go over these notes. Usually at the end of each session, I do a quick summary, talk about what we discussed. Sometimes I'll give a quick homework assignment based on that goal, ask them to think about it some more, take notes, occasionally even watch a movie or read a section of a book to help them understand in greater detail what we talked about in that session. Then at the beginning of each session, I'll talk about last week we discussed this goal and this concern. How has your week gone? Do we have any input on that? Is this something that you'd like to talk about today? And in the context of these dialogues, we come up with priorities, what seems most important. As a therapist, I focus on what's critical for the couple. I let them set the tone, I let them set the pace, and I let them prioritize the goals. Occasionally, I'll feel like there's something that they're avoiding or is hard for them, in which case I will say, this is what I think we need to talk about today. What's the best way to talk about it? The first goal was improving constructive communication. With so many intense issues to address, it was hard for Mark and Lisa to talk about things without things rapidly escalating into blaming, name-calling, and yelling. So the first thing I tried to teach them to do was how to do an internal check-in and manage autonomic flooding. We discussed autonomic flooding in terms of what is it, how does it feel, and how do you know you're actually feeling flooded? Flooding is autonomic arousal in response to feeling intensely upset. Some people know that they're feeling flooded and they can feel their heart rate go up, their breathing gets shallow, they may feel dizzy, their stomach may start to hurt. Some people are very aware of this when it happens. Surprisingly, other people don't notice it at all, but it definitely has an effect on how rational we are and how we're able to talk about things. So when we discussed this with Mark, Mark noticed that he had a very low awareness of his internal cues. Mark believed he didn't experience flooding at all. He valued being logical and rational, like Spock or Data from Star Trek. So in session, I had Lisa start grilling him about the details of his affair, and I had him check his smartwatch. He was shocked to see his heart rate skyrocketing, which he found to be unnerving and also worrisome from a health perspective, because, as he said, I'm not getting any younger, and I don't want to drop dead of a heart attack because I'm fighting with my wife. Once he was convinced that flooding and autonomic hyperarousal was in fact occurring, we could discuss how to increase his awareness of it and manage it better. He eventually recognized that he had a strong preference for avoiding emotional conflict and then shutting down, which he'd initially explained to himself as being rational. As soon as he felt defensive, I had him do an internal check-in. How am I breathing? Is it rapid? Shallow? How is my heart rate? What is my smartwatch telling me is happening to my body? Am I building up tension somewhere? If so, where? Neck, back, shoulders? When he noticed signs of flooding, he would breathe slowly and deeply, lower the voice volume, reduce the pace of his words, do some stretching if necessary, take a short break, and sip some water. He decided to make tea and sip that while discussing difficult topics. He also agreed to make sure he was physically comfortable and not in a rush when he and Lisa had set aside time to talk. Lisa, on the other hand, had an intense awareness of her internal cues. She realized that she was hyper aware of all signs of stress, tension, and autonomic arousal in her body. While the data from her smartwatch surprised her in how high her heart rate was actually elevated to, she knew her heart rate was escalating quickly and it was scary to her. She noticed that she would gulp air and have trouble actually getting her words out. Lisa started taking a yoga class after work and was learning about relaxing her body and breathing in a more healthy fashion. She realized that she held tension in her stomach and in her shoulders. She would notice her shoulders rising all the way up to my ears, as she would say it, when she was stressed. She also learned to do an internal check-in. She used the mantra ground and center when she noticed autonomic arousal rising to uncomfortable levels. She slowed down her breathing, relaxed her shoulders, relaxed her abdominal muscles, and adjust how she was sitting for greater comfort. She also found sipping hot tea helped her stay relaxed.